Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. And if you know, Thursdays for my Facebook Live is the new normal. And I think I've picked a really good topic for today's new normal. And what I want to talk about, and what I want to pick your brain about, is how people are changing the way they form relationships. And then what's the impact on how people approach relationships to folks like us, real estate and mortgage professionals that are in the business of relationship selling. And I hope it all makes sense to you. But I saw a chart, a fascinating chart last weekend, and it was how couples meet in the United States. That was the name of the chart, and it showed it was really incredible. And I put a link to the chart in the notes below. And I also talked about this on my LinkedIn and did a full post explaining what the impact of what these changes could be. But if you can see the chart, if you click to the link, here's what you'll see. It'll say, here's all the way that people used to find their spouse in the United States, and here's how they find it today. For example, back in the 1950s, about 22% of people, or about 25% of people found their spouse through their family. You know what that number is today? Less than 5%. Similarly, back in 1950, about 18% of people found their spouse in grade school. Like they went to elementary school with them and they found the person and they got married. About 18%. You know what that number is today? Around 2%. Same way you can go now, same thing with college. Back in 1950, about 8% of the people found their spouse in college. That number might have peaked in around 2000 at 10 or 11%. You know what that number is today? 2%. Virtually none, right? And so far we've seen where people used to find their spouse through their family or through college or through grade school. It's the same thing with neighbors, by the way. Neighbors used to be a pretty good source of finding your spouse. It used to be about 12, 13%. Today it's 2%. And here's a surprising thing, really surprising though, for me. The two big ones used to be finding your spouse through work. The number peaked in 1990 when about 25% of people found their spouse through work. Today that number is dropping quickly and it's somewhere around 5% and trending less. And the last thing is through friends. Your friends used to set you up, right? Your friends used to set you up and help you find your spouse. And so that you're finding your friend through a spouse, or finding your spouse through a friend, peaked at around 2005, when roughly 35% of us found our spouse from a friend, from a referral from a friend. That number today, 5%, right? So all these places where we used to find our spouse, where we used to go, by the way, bars are in there too, but I don't want to go unmentioned. Bars had their peak in around 1985. About 20% of us found our spouse over at a bar or out in the public at a restaurant or a function or something like that. Let's replace the word bar with like a public facility. About 22% of us in the 80s found our spouse that way. We went out to events, parties, whatever, weddings, whatever social event, and we found our spouse. And that number today is less than 5%. So all the traditional ways, we listed college, neighbors, grade school, bars, social activities, work, family, and friends. All those that used to be accounted for nearly 100% of how we found our spouse. Today, they all account for less than 30%. As a matter of fact, they might account for less than 20%. And the way their trend lines are, when you look at this chart, is they're going to hit zero. They're going to have people aren't going to find their spouses that way, right? And so what that means is how people go about finding the most important relationship, what I'd expect to be the most important relationship in their life, has completely changed. And how they even go about, the formation of these partnerships has completely changed. And not only has that changed, but who they are is changing too. Because the way they go about it is just a reflection of who they become. And I say who, I mean people. And there's no good thing or bad thing, but here's the thing, you're not going to be surprised. And this chart looks like this. It goes like this. This chart goes from zero to skyrocketing, way up, in just 30 years, 40 years, from 1980 from zero to 2020 to somewhere around 70%. Most people find their spouse online. That's right, online. through dating sources or social media. So it's something that didn't even exist 40 years ago is now not only the dominant way, but it's headed to be the only way you can find a spouse is the social media, online, or in like dating sites, in portals, right? And I saw this and I go, that's a really interesting statistic. One, I don't know what it means about society. I don't know what it means about our future. And two, I said, I'm so glad that I'm happily married. And, that's not a world I don't know if I could thrive in. But then, I go, well, what's the implication to me? What's the implication if I'm a loan officer or a real estate agent? Well, we're in the relationship business, right? And if the way people find their primary relationship is changing, it's going to change on how they find their secondary, tertiary, and auxiliary relationships. Meaning, if we approach our most important relationship by going online to find it, we're probably going to start doing that for all our relationships. I'm guessing that if you're, say, a loan officer or a real estate agent, and if you look at all these sources where people used to find their spouses, and if you replace grade school with, say, for loan officer, replace the word grade school with real estate agent, or you replace, family, so keep family, right? But if you replace all these words with your traditional referral sources, my guess is at some point our chart is going to look the same. If we replace the title of How Couples Meet in the United States to how home buyers find their real estate agent or how home buyers find their loan officers, we can change the sources, but the chart's going to look the same. All the traditional sources are going to trend and get to zero when the dominant source is going to be online, all those things online. Now, we're at the precipice of this. If I put our chart, if I was to overlay it, I would say we're probably in referring to this chart. Really, the chart was flat from 1980, 1990, came up a little bit. And then really 2000, it took about 20 years before it to take off. And then it's just straight up. We're probably, we probably are in the early stages of this. But the hockey stick acceleration is very fast. Very, very fast. And you should check this chart out. I really want you to go. If I change the word how couples meet to how people choose my profession, and if I just said, look, now you could be a naysayer and go, oh, that would never happen here. But would you ever think that people go about picking their spouse online? Now, it doesn't start as they pick your spouse. It starts as a dating app or whatever it is, right? I would have never guessed it, but I guarantee you the consumer behavior, the human behavior is changing, and that we're going to have a chart that looks just like this. And if this is what our chart is going to look like, where people create all their relationships, they begin all the relationships through online, are you prepared for that? Are you building your platform for that to come? Now, it may not be here today, but it's certainly coming here, and it's certainly accelerating. So who do we need to become? How do we need to change the way that we form our relationships, that we approach relationships, that we attract relationships, if that's what our future is? And so I really encourage you to check out the chart, check out my LinkedIn. It's a really, really interesting topic. And I definitely think that I 100% think, and you can disagree, that when you look at this chart, you can replace, like I said, the word how couples meet with how people select whatever service you have, and it's going to look the same. It's going to look the same. And I know we're going to say, no, I'll always get my business from real estate agents, or no, I'll always get my business from CPAs, or no, I'll always get my business from XYZ. I don't know. I don't think so. I think this hockey stick is going to apply to us, honestly. So that's food for thought. Now, let's look at something else. Let's just say this is true. Let's just say you may not think so. You may think that we're stuck in time and things will never change. But let's just say that this is true. I'm also curious what does that mean about the people we serve, right? What does it mean that I don't know. I've never been on a dating app. I don't know what they're like. I can only guess why they're so popular, right? But I know this. It seems like dating is compressed today. Today, people that source their girlfriends, boyfriends, friends, whatever, turn out to be significant others. That they go through a a filtering process to get a much closer target. And then they go through a process of getting to know one another through kind of an organized fashion online. And so that when they get through that process, the expectation of success is higher, meaning I assume it's more efficient, right? I think people that find, the person they're dating online, they have a lot more confidence in who that person is because that person had to go through the algorithm to match, and then they had to answer a bunch of questions. You get to learn their bio, and then you start having conversations first with already being, educated on who they are, so you can have really specific conversations, and they know what you want, you know what they want. Like, there's a lot of pre-work done before you even have a human conversation, and then from that human conversation, things can go very quickly. But it's interesting. So, I can only surmise what all this stuff means, but I can tell you first, how are people? How is this the impact of finding spouses online or any relationship online? What's the impact that is that going to have on just humans' interpersonal skills, right? Like and their communication skills and their emotional skills, right? I mean, today what happens? You hope that a computer program, or you hope that all sorts of social evidence, or you hope you get all this data on who you're going to connect with, right? And that then you don't need to go through the process of really communicating. You don't need to go through the process of emotional turmoil a lot of times. You don't have to have a lot of skills. The machine did the skills for you, so you're pretty complimentary. It makes it a lot easier. Where it used to be, if you had if your parents set you up with a lughead and you had to go on dates with them, you still had to be nice to them. You still had to do something for a couple hours. You had to be able to communicate, and you know what? Sometimes they might not have fit the mold, or they might not have fit the model, but you figured out how to make it work. Today, I think that people have such a tight profile that if it doesn't fit the profile, the machine automatically kicks it out. And so what it doesn't allow for variance, right? I think what's happening is that the variance from target now is being eradicated. And if you think that as a service provider, then what we have to make sure is that we hit bullseye from the beginning. Like we have to understand what the client wants from minute one, because their patience has been really trimmed, just given the nature of how they're going about finding relationships and services, right? They want the machine to line them up with exactly who they want to be with, giving them exactly what they want from the first get-go. That's why they're going through this process. They don't want to go through, random fire shotgun approach and just see what happens. That's not what they're interested in. And so we're going to have to learn how to deliver a service that meets that very specific target, or we won't have the opportunity. So not only do we need to figure out how to get in front of them in this new world, this evolving world, well, we got to figure out how to adjust our funnels to capture these people. But the bottom of the funnel better be a bullseye to what they're looking for, because they're not going to have tolerance for variance outside of it. But it's really funny. So I first saw this chart, and I thought it first struck me as humorous, and I thought about it, I debated about it, and then I'm like, hey, you know what? This chart isn't so humorous. This chart is kind of serious. It has implications on what we do. If we say we're a relationship lender or a relationship real estate agent, and people have a totally different expectation of relationships, especially relationship formation, because that's where the really crux is. We don't get the chance to start a relationship, then we lose at the beginning. And so we have to, with that relationship formation piece, we're going to have to master in the new normal. So check out the chart, see if you disagree with me. I promise you our charts go just the same. I might change the names or whatever your sources are. It's going to look the same. I hope you found this interesting. There's a link to the person who was Ashley Fitzgerald, who brought this up on a X post, and then I actually read it in an interesting financial newsletter that was talking about the impact of this. But check it out. Let me know. I hope you got something out of that. I hope you're having a great week. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.